Today I had the absolute pleasure of speaking with a AI digital rock star, Steve Woods. So Steve is the Chief Technology Officer of a company called Nudge.ai. And what these guys are doing is truly phenomenal. It's about relationships, business relationships specifically, and how to build trust sort of automatically with the help of artificial intelligence. I mean, we know that business is about relationships. Now, he has an opportunity to use a piece of technology that sort of propels you into the next level of networking and staying in touch. What this tool actually does, and I've used it to sort of be upfront about it, is it basically records everything that's going on in your network. So, for example, somebody in your network, Bob Smith, has won an award at a dog show. You get notified about that through your regular updates, but also within your calendar. So next time you're in a meeting with Bob and you look at your calendar, you'll notice that Bob got an award. There's an opportunity, a golden opportunity, to congratulate Bob. Most people are going to miss it. But because you have Nudge.ai, you're sort of kept informed of all these sort of events. Even though it may feel trivial on a business level, it's significant on a personal level. So here's an opportunity to get ahead, build trust, build relationships. Nudge is a phenomenal tool. I highly recommend you try out their free version, and I'm sure it'll blow your mind as it did mine. So here we're going to be speaking with Steve Woods. Great conversation. So Steve, it is fantastic to have you here with us today. So looking at your LinkedIn profile and your background, I mean, you are, from business terms and in terms of AI, you're like a pedigree, like a racehorse, man. You worked with Bain & Company as a consultant. You went on to become the Chief Technology Officer of Eloqua. Then you went on to work with Oracle as a Group VP. So you got a lot of relevant background. How did you take the avenue of saying, you know what, I'm going to build a freaking huge company that's going to focus on AI and sort of AI-powered sales insights? Tell us a little bit about yourself and how we got to today.
Sure. Well, thanks for having me, Justin. Great to be here. I think that the key part of the history there is obviously Eloqua. With the founding team there, we really went deep in the marketing space and built Eloqua to be part of the transition of marketing from being very much a craft industry to a discipline of metrics, of process, of insights, of data, and really transformed how marketing was approached in most B2B organizations with us and some similar competitors in the market space. And it was really interesting to see how a set of technologies, we started that in 2000, a set of technologies, when applied in the right way, could very much transform a discipline that had been around for a long time. Marketing is certainly nothing new, but marketing went through such a transformation from 2000 to 2000 and kind of 10, 12 era. It was just such a fascinating ride to be part of, and it really got us interested in that kind of an approach. And when that story came to an end and we were looking around for what the next thing was, the sales space was sort of an obvious kind of next door neighbor to take a look at.
So you've sort of had Nudge for what, three and a half years now?
Yeah, it's about that, about 3 years. Yeah.
2 years ago, I started using Nudge myself, where it's pretty sexy. I mean, for people who haven't used it, I mean, it gives you all these insights. So as you're visiting web pages and you're writing emails, I think it pulls it from probably LinkedIn, I'd imagine.
Actually, that would be the one source we don't pull from.
Really?
A lot of it it's all primary research that the systems do. So news articles and sort of primary sources of contact data.
Is that because LinkedIn are sort of becoming a bit fussy with access to the APIs and stuff?
I mean, LinkedIn has a great business. I mean, their business basically is collecting and selling data. They did very well selling data in the HR space. They're doing phenomenally well selling data in the marketing space now. It makes sense why they're very much a walled garden in terms of data access. So they don't have an open API to speak of. And so, you know, I think nobody out there is able to use the LinkedIn data set, which is fine. You can go back to primary sources with a bit of work and collect a similar quality set of data.
So for people who haven't used Nudge before, tell us a little bit about how it works. or the sort of the magic,
Sure.
the genie in the bottle?
Well, the magic is interesting. Really, what we're trying to do in helping people sell is help people build relationships. If you look at anything to do with selling, whether you're selling a product, whether you're selling a service, whether you're selling the vision of your organization to investors, whatever you're doing, the crux of that is all about building trust and building trusted relationships. And there's a lot of that that has the elegance that only humans can bring to the table. That ability to kind of build that human bond with people is a very human thing. But there's a ton of it that is just pure grunt work. What relationships do I have? And out of my relationships, who knows who? And am I keeping on top of my relationships? And what's going on with all of them? What's going on with the people that I care about? What's going on with the companies that I care about? What's going on with the companies that I'm in touch with, that I might lose touch with, or that I want to be in touch with? Which of those things gives me a point of view that I can start a conversation around? That, for someone who wants to build relationships and wants to build trust, the research behind that is all just grunt work. Looking at news sources daily, spreadsheets of who you've been in touch with and who you're losing touch with. Right. And done well, people can become phenomenally successful, phenomenally powerful by keeping all those relationships alive and growing. Where most people fall down, though, is the work is too hard. Getting up at 6 in the morning to do all that research manually is a daunting task. And what we decided to do with Nudge was to tackle that with the ability of today's AI algorithms to tackle not the human elements, but the grunt work elements. Who are you in touch with? Who are you losing touch with? What's going on with them? What's interesting? What should you know about them and their company and their organization? And tee that up for you on a silver platter, so to speak, so that you can focus on building just the trust and the relationship aspect of what you need in order to be successful.
You know what I love as well, Steve, is like things like the when you're having meetings, when you've got a busy day, it's your point. I mean, you haven't got time to go and check up on, okay, how's Bob doing? Like, you have that information served up if they're mentioned in news reports, or it's all served up there. So as you go into your calendar and that, you can see the information.
Yeah, and it's really one of those things where relationships are built on those little tiny interactions. Something happens to Bob, Bob wins an award, Bob's company wins an award, and you notice it. And coming into the room, you say something nice about it. Or if there wasn't a meeting, you haven't talked to Bob in 6 months, you reach out and say, hey, congratulations, really nicely done. It's a minor thing. It's a tiny little thing. But noticing it moves that relationship a step forward. And not noticing it, it's not fatal, but it fails to move that relationship one step forward. And the best relationship builders never miss a chance for one of those tiny little moments to put that relationship in a better light than it was the moment before. And that's really all we're trying to do, is just make sure that you have those moments in your back pocket and know about them so that you can build that relationship one little tiny increment at a time.
To be honest, I don't even think you're doing it justice. You're calling it little moments. To me, those moments, those little moments for Bob, it's a huge moment. It might be something, and to your point, like without Nudge, everybody else who's not using Nudge doesn't realize that Bob's just won an award or he's been mentioned in a magazine article. I think it's huge.
It's interesting because in so many ways it's small from an effort perspective. And that's really sort of where it was coming from there. Is it doesn't take much. If you know that, just making note of that with Bob, it's a tiny amount of effort. But yeah, what it does to Bob and Bob's perspective on you can be quite significant. And what we found time and time again with people whose success derives from their network is it's one of those things where, I don't know if you remember the game in the 90s, Minesweeper, where you'd click on these little mines and it got very addictive. And once in a while, you'd click on a mine and suddenly this whole area would open up. And it was this euphoric moment as an addicted player of Minesweeper. And I find networking is the same way. you'll do a lot of these tiny things, and then suddenly the one thing causes a reaction in somebody, and you get an introduction to someone else, and that turns into something bigger, and they're connected to someone that you'd spoken with a while ago, and voila, this huge leap forward in your success as a professional happens, all triggered by the tiniest of tiny things. But if you hadn't put all that work in beforehand to kind of set the fertile ground, you wouldn't see that cascade of virtuous events happen.
One of the things I wanted to ask you was about your ideal customer. Now, the nice thing, I mean, you guys really have a very, very low price point, even a free version of Nudge, if I recall correctly. What I wanted to ask you was from a sort of scalability perspective, the enterprise stuff, because I'd imagine there must be a wealth of information. As soon as you start putting people together, teams of people together, the kind of information that you can, not only information, but connections that you can extract from that and sort of create more visibility into those sort of relationship insights.
And I think if you kind of take a step back and look at the business of today, right? We're obviously evolving in a world from sort of a production oriented, every person is a replaceable cog world, to a world where individuals are nodes on a graph of knowledge, and their ability to contribute to the organization is really a function of two things. What do they themselves know, and what other knowledge do they have access to inside the organization, outside the organization, through their personal network, through their business network? What can they make happen? What ideas can they formulate because of the fact that they've been in those conversations and they understand, to your example, spiders. If you look at a business, whether it's a consulting business, like the big five, or it's a business in transition like IBM, or any knowledge-oriented business like Google or Facebook or Salesforce.com, any of these businesses are a group of people who each bring fascinatingly different nodes to that overall network. And the organizations that can pull that together and say, we need to understand this, we need to have access to these kind of skills, we need to bring these people together, we need to get into this organization, have these conversations. If you look at your business as a networked group of people, it's this incredibly powerful view that gives you this kind of high ground visibility into what is possible for your organization that you never thought was possible. And I think a lot of organizations are starting to transition to thinking of their people that way, and we're very happy to be right at the forefront of a lot of those conversations.
In terms of implementing Nudge, how complicated is it?
It is dead simple. As you mentioned, there is a free version for individuals that care about their network. That's available on the front page of our website. There's a team version that is really about teams selling into lists of target accounts. That product has a per user model where you can try it out for a little bit. You can build a small team to get a feel for it. You can put in a credit card and grow from there. The onboarding is very simple. Just a quick wizard, snaps into your Chrome and lives sort of where you work with those insights. It's a very easy product to come on board with and begin to see the value of and grow from there as that value is proven out.
So, I mean, obviously Nudge, I mean, you guys are at the cutting edge of what you're doing. You got a very specific task that you do, creates a lot of value for businesses and individuals. But in terms of AI in general, I mean, again, as I mentioned when we started speaking, like, you've got a great background that is perfectly suited to the conversation we're having today. As you've been going through your business career and now with Nudge, are there any specific trends that you've come across and said to yourself, you know what, this is going to be huge. I got to get in on this?
Yeah, I think in many ways, if you boil AI down beneath multiple levels of buzzwords, it actually becomes kind of huge again, which is to say that if you look at the first generation sort of pre-AI of what programming was, programming is very simple, right? Your building blocks are extremely simple. You've got a bunch of for loops and a few if statements. And then you do that at massive scale, and it creates some very interesting things. V1 of the whole sort of internet era. If you boil AI down to that level of simplicity, it is the ability to recognize a pattern that is incomplete, whether that is in text, whether that is in images, whether that is in data sets. You can say, here's a bunch of stuff. What is the pattern? And at the level of basic tools like the programming constructs of a for loop and an if statement, that allows us to tackle some really interesting things in really interesting ways. It's not Terminator. It's not robots taking over the world. It's just another tool in the arsenal. But you can start looking at things like networks and relationships and what's happening in the world, and you can understand it at a level that you could not understand it before, and come up with interesting things like, hey, this has happened. It kind of looks like somebody who appears to be your friend Bob won an award. The so what of that we've talked about in terms of that ability of that to build a relationship. The under the hood how of that requires a lot of recognizing probabilistic patterns. Is this really Bob that's mentioned in this article? Kind of looks like it is. Is the article about an award? Kind of looks like it is. Is Bob someone in your network that you're losing touch with? Kind of looks like he is. Let's put that together and serve that up to you in a way that takes advantage of those patterns that we have recognized, that a human could look at and say, yeah, I think that's Bob. Yeah, I think that's an award. Yeah, I think you're losing touch with him. Yeah, we should put that in front of you. But you can't do that as a human at scale. So I think in many ways, AI is the big thing, but not in the robots taking over the world mantra. It's more around the ability to do things that humans were doing intuitively. Now we can do them at scale instantly.
Right. So as you mentioned before, sort of taking away all that sort of grunt work, getting up at 5 or 6 in the morning to make this, is really just doing all those things a lot faster. It just makes so much sense to have this stuff served up on a silver platter. What do you see happening in the marketing and sales space? Do you see more sort of very targeted solutions that just crunch the data like Nudge does? Or how do you see it evolving sort of in the next 3 to 5 years from your perspective and your experience?
Yeah, I think we start to go from the view of companies that we had 10 years ago, which was very, very basic. You had a company, it had metrics like a NIAX code for its industry, a number of employees, and a revenue figure. And that kind of gave you this sense of what the company was and whether it fit, which is a terrible way to look at what the company is and whether it fits. Now, with the benefit of many of these new algorithms, you're able to look at an organization and say, well, what do they want? What are they trying to do? What intents do we see from their behavior? Who do they know? Who influences their thinking? And are any of those people that influence their thinking in our network? Who are we talking to there? Who has that relationship? Have we worked with any of them before? Did somebody on our services team work with a key decision maker at that organization in the past? Is there social proximity there that we can tie into this intent and say, hey, I know that you intend to do this. I know that you know us and trust us already in this small amount based on this one relationship. Let's embrace that and build that trust even further. And I think when you apply that style of thinking to the revenue picture, and I'm not a fan of really differentiating between quote unquote sales and quote unquote marketing. Fundamentally, we're all trying to generate revenue for an organization, and the bits that fit into each purview kind of go back and forth over time. But if you're trying to generate revenue, you're much better to understand the intentions and the social proximity of an organization and use that knowledge to guide their behavior than you are to understand their NIAX code and their revenue and hammer them with undifferentiated messaging. It's just going to work better.
So the one last question, what advice would you give to marketers specifically, or businesses in general, with regards AI and implementing it? They've never done it before. They know that they should be looking at it, or at least considering some AI in their business to drive efficiencies. And
I would sort of go the opposite way and say, ignore the AI piece of it. It doesn't matter to you as a marketer. And I know I'm saying this as a company that talks about AI, but what businesses, ours included, must deliver are solutions that solve a problem, that give you an opportunity. And as a marketer today, you've got to think about, how do I get inside the heads of buyers, understand what they're trying to do, understand who influences them, who do they trust, how can they trust us more, how can I build those relationships, how can I guide them along a path of thinking towards buying my solution. And you have to put in place the necessary tools for you to accomplish that. But it doesn't matter if that tool does or does not use AI, or does or does not say that they use AI. They might use AI under the hood to accomplish something and never really talk about it. The point is, you have to accomplish a business objective, and you have to think about that business objective through the lens of, what the buyers and sellers of today look like and do and act like. And if you accomplish that, you realize that the concept of AI falls out in the wash. It doesn't matter. You will likely end up using tools that put AI into practice under the hood, because it's a great set of tools and techniques of today. And it would be hard to deliver some of the things that need to be delivered without using those tools. But as a marketer or a sales leader buying the tools of today, I don't think you need to care. You need to buy them as tools to solve a problem, period.
I love your approach of saying solve a problem. And if AI happens to be a part of providing it a better solution, great. If not, as opposed to trying to squeeze AI into, because it happens to be call it the buzzword, or it's being used by the people.
You don't need an AI strategy, to put it that way. You need a sales and marketing strategy.
Steve, thank you very much. I mean, this has really been insightful, brought a lot of knowledge around this sort of the sales relationship piece. Because as you said, I mean, there's a lot of effort goes into staying on top of your relationships and how people that you know, how they're evolving in their lives and so forth. So Nudge brings a lot of value to staying on top of that automatically, in this particular case, leveraging artificial intelligence. So once again, thank you very much for your time. No doubt people will be looking at Nudge. I know a lot of people are using Nudge. I wish you the best, and no doubt we will be speaking again.
Thank you for having me, Justin. It was a pleasure to talk.